What's up, everybody? Welcome to Crackin Jank. We're taking a short break from cracking packs to bring you a very special video today showcasing a huge crossover altar project I had commissioned a couple years ago, even before the Lord of the Rings MTG set had been announced. It's a 24-card set of staple, non-basic EDH lands re-envisioned as some of the most iconic locations from Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. So whether you're a fan of MTG, Lord of the Rings, or just sweet altar art, you are almost certainly going to enjoy these pieces. Let's get cracking. So we'll start off with a short backstory on how I ended up commissioning this set. Originally I was just looking to have my 10 revised dual lands altered or extended because, well, white border cards are gross. My research led me to a YouTube video in which they showed off some play sets of their own dual lands that they had altered, and they looked amazing. The artist who did the alters was Dustin Brossard of Brossard MTG Alters, and when I went to his Facebook page, I came to discover that not only did he do great work, but he was also a huge Tolkien guy and had done numerous alters in that theme. So I reached out to him and I pitched the idea of altering the 10 dual lands in the themes of locations from Middle-earth. I really wanted the cards to be more about the locales than any of the characters, so I asked that the characters be more like silhouettes as not to distract from the lands themselves. Now, while creating the list of lands that would be associated with each location, it became apparent to me that some locations were far better represented by other non-basic lands in MTG, and after some extensive flip-flopping, the 10-card set had expanded to 24 cards. This was way more than I had originally anticipated, but the further down the rabbit hole we went, the more geeked up I was for the results, and boy, was it worth it. Now, I also want to give a quick shout out to the genius behind these alters, Dustin of Brossard MTG Alters. I will have links below to his Facebook and his Instagram pages where you can check out all the amazing work he has posted in a vast array of styles and themes. You can really tell this guy loves his craft and loves him some Lord of the Rings from the amount of care and detail that he put into these cards. Finally, before we get into the actual cards, I wanted to answer what I'm sure were going to be some common questions that came along with this project. The first is yes, all of these alters were done on the real versions of these Magic cards. The second is no, I am not going to share the cost of these commissions. The primary reason for this is that commission prices vary greatly from project to project, and I don't want to put numbers out there that Dustin will potentially have people quoting back to him if they want something done. Any other questions you have, I will happily answer in the comments if they are not already answered during the course of the video. So, without further ado, let's get into our Lands of Middle-earth alters. We'll start off with the origin of the project and show you the dual lands. The first of these is the Plateau, the Mountain Plains dual land. The flat elevation of a plateau matches up perfectly with the iconic imagery of Weathertop, the hilltop ruins where Aragorn saves Frodo and the hobbits from a pack of Nazgul. The one comment you'll hear me say throughout all these cards is going to be how much I love the detail that is involved here. It is certainly apparent in this one with the tremendously fine lines of the rocks and the grasses. I also love how faint the sky shows the clouds and the birds up there. Like, you wouldn't almost even know that there are clouds there unless you really look at it. It's a great piece and a perfect example of what we have in store for you today. Our second dual land is going to be Scrubland, our Swamp Plains land. Originally, I was going to have this be our Dead Marshes, but another land actually fit that location far better, and that's how we ended up expanding the project. So in the end, I felt like Osgiliath fit this land best, mostly because it was the front line between Sauron's forces and the free people of Middle-earth, so it had that kind of border between black and white, good and evil feel to it. I also love that Dustin included the Witch King on top of his Fell Beast here, and the way he's looking out across the ruins of the city at Minas Tirith. Our third dual land is the Forest Plains land, Savannah. So this was another card that was originally going to be a different location, but got shifted when we expanded the project. That worked out just fine, as the Savannah ended up being the land of Rohan. I love the imagery in the single Rohirrim amongst the vast rolling plains. The detail of the figure, as well as the amazing strokes in the sky and the detailed grass, bring this image to life. Another image with an amazing sky is our mountain swampland Badlands. One does not simply think red and black in a name like Badlands without thinking of the evil of Mordor. There are so many things to love about this card. The smoke pouring from Mount Doom and filling the sky. The all-seeing eye of Sauron atop Barad-dûr in the background, ever watchful. And the Nazgûl circling the evil of the land. This is probably one of my top 5 of the set. Our next location is the Swamp Forest Land Bayou. Now, when I thought of a creepy forest, the first thing that came to mind was the maze-like paths of Mirkwood. Dustin certainly did not disappoint with this one. The thorny branches and the menacing spiderwebs certainly give this land the feeling that you could be spider food at any moment if you would stray from the path. The image here is simple and yet incredibly effective. Our 6th dual land is the Island Plains land Tundra. Now, this was not an easy land to assign a location to, but we ended up going with the Hornburg, also known as Helm's Deep. The tone and coloring of this land do a wonderful job of expressing the cold isolation of the nearly impenetrable fortress. I also love how the color schemes of these lands are matching up very nicely with the color patterns of the text box on these lands. Up next is our Mountain Forest land Taiga. The Middle-earth location that came immediately to mind when I thought of Taiga were the infamous Misty Mountains, the vast mountain range that nearly divides Middle-earth in two. I love the coloring of the sky in this shot, that purpley gray, and you could also count the silhouettes of 15 weary travelers trudging their way to Erebor. This was one of the first previews that I got back of the finished products, and it confirmed to me that this was going to be a huge success. Alright, so our 8th dual land is the Island Mountain Volcanic Island. So there aren't too many islands of note in The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. However, there is a very famous mountain that is also adjacent to a body of water. Thus, the volcanic island ended up being the Lonely Mountain and the Long Lake. You're probably already tired of hearing me say this, but the sky in this shot is epic. The yellow and the orange in the corner of the skyline gives the impression that Smaug has been out there up to no good, as we see his silhouette flying about, stalking the skies above Dale and Erebor. Up next, we have the Island Swamp Underground Sea. I was originally going to make this the giant cavern that Gandalf and the Balrog fall into in Moria, but then an even better idea came to mind, and the underground sea was transformed into the eerie dark of Gollum's cave. My favorite thing about this image are the small rays of light coming down and reflecting off Gollum's back and the water. Now that is some serious detail. I also love the colors in this shot, the gray, blue, and black color scheme. I'll probably say this at least 10 times, but this might be in my top 5 cards of this set. Our final dual land is the Island Forest Tropical Island. This was one of the last lands we assigned out, and I had not yet included one of the most important locations in Middle-earth. So we found a way to work the beauty of Lorien into a wooded water shot as the Fellowship departs in their boats down the Anduin. The cool colors of the darkened wood contrast perfectly with the warm colors of the sunrise through the trees, and you could even make out the silhouettes of our heroes continuing their journey. I also love the detail of the reflection in the water of the trees above the water. Perfect. Chef's kiss. So those were our 10 dual lands, and as you can see, there are still a bunch of important Middle-earth locations that we haven't covered yet. But fear not, we have 14 lands left to go and a lot of gorgeous locations to show off. We'll start off the second half of the show with the most iconic EDH land, Command Tower. And what better place to represent the beacon of leadership than the shining Minas Tirith. I love how one side of the city is covered in a looming darkness, while one side remains aglow with the hope arriving from the west. The shading and the grayscale on this shot are awesome. Our next land is a very different tower, Reliquary Tower. As Reliquary Tower allows you to amass great knowledge in-game, its counterpart, the Tower of Isengard, was also full of great, powerful knowledge in Middle-earth. At one point, I had considered using Isengard as an option for strip mine, as Saruman had ripped many resources from the land to create his army. However, I wanted to show the tower in its full resplendent form instead of a pillaged mess. I very much enjoy the contrast in this image that makes it almost look as if it were animated. So our next land in the set is Field of the Dead. And if you hadn't already guessed it, this is the land that we chose over Scrubland to be the perfect representation of the dead marshes. I mean, they are both literally a swamp full of dead people. While this shot may seem pretty simple, if you look very closely, you can see the faces of the undead waiting to claim their next victim in the swamp. These are the kind of details that we're talking about here. The quality of this card was so good, I really think that it could be a legitimate MTG card art. Moving right along, we have yet another tower, the Phyrexian Tower. An evil tower. Do we have any evil towers in Middle-earth? Making Phyrexian Tower into the fortress Barad-dûr was a no-brainer. This is one of the best examples of how intricate the details are getting on these lands. I mean, look at the minute details of the architecture and the lighting on Barad-dûr. I love the eye at the top going across the nameplate, and we even have another Nazgul sighting. Staying with the theme of evil bases, our next land is Volrath's Stronghold. To represent this fortress in Middle-earth, we transformed it into Minas Morgul, the home of the Nazgul. This land might be one of the most striking due to its intense green color and contrast. The eerie light emanating from this fortress makes it feel like an evil emerald city. I feel the urge to put the ring on just looking at this place. So our next land and its Middle-earth counterpart are a bit of a meme with my group of friends. The land is strip mined, and there is no place in Middle-earth where they dove too greedily and too deep than the mines of Moria. The ability to get so much detail on the columns in here while also having it be so dark is truly impressive. And they call it a mine. A mine! Speaking of great Gimli quotes, our next land is Winding Canyon, a great representation of Emyn Muil, the impossible labyrinth of razor-sharp rocks between our heroes and their destination. The dark tones of the art do a great job of representing the hopelessness that Frodo and Sam begin to feel as they repeatedly cross the same paths over and over, attempting to find their way out. And if you look very closely, you can even see 3 diminutive silhouettes in the upper right-hand corner. Our next land up is the ever-popular Ancient Tomb. If you're going to have a tomb, then you should also have a necromancer. So we made Ancient Tomb into Dol Guldur, the base of operations for Sauron while he was rebuilding his power in Middle-earth. This is yet another image where the sky seems to almost come to life as if it is perpetually about to storm there all the time. The fog rolling through the ruins also gives this a great feeling of dread. Another popular EDH land is Reflecting Pool, and this made me think of one of the great images in the Lord of the Rings movies when Gollum was catching fish in the Forbidden Pools as Faramir's men prepared their ambush. I love the silhouette of Gollum, who's making quite a number of appearances on these cards, with so much detail that you can even see the wispy little hairs on his head. One of my very few regrets, however, of this set was not asking for this card to be a bit more colorful as it represents a rainbow-esque colored land. But I'm very happy nonetheless. Following up with another color-fixing land, we have Exotic Orchard. So if you're thinking of forests in Middle-earth, you have to eventually find your way into the depths of Fangorn. I specifically asked to get an Ent wandering about in the woods, and our wish was granted. The trees of the forest also seem particularly menacing to any outsiders who may come gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning. So we're getting to our last few cards, but don't worry, we still have some heavy hitters coming up. One of which is our next land, Cavern of Souls. I mean, it's a cavern with souls in it. I don't think we have to stretch too far here to partner this up with the Paths of the Dead. It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it. For me, this one is one of the most impressive cards due specifically to the ghost portrayed along the paths and how the paint was applied so thin and so finely that he was made to be translucent. Top marks for that. Coming up next, we have one of my best and worst decisions of the entire set. So the set almost ended up being 23 cards until at the last moment I added Cascading Cataracts to the list and its Middle-earth counterpart, the Argonath. I'm super happy that I did, as this is easily one of my favorite cards of the set. I love the style and how sharp and contrast it is. Now, as to why I say it's one of my worst decisions of the set as well, I have a very large number of Cascading Cataract cards, and of all the cards I chose to send out to have altered, I sent one with a stamp on it. Thankfully, Dustin gave me some tips on how to remove the stamp without hurting the card or the alter, so it won't be an issue for long, but still a pretty bonehead move on my part. Okay, so we're down to the final two cards, and if you've been keeping track, I'm sure there are two very popular Middle-earth locales that you've noticed are missing. The MTG card for the first two is Alchemist's Refuge. It's kind of funny that one of the least iconic lands in the set ended up being one of the most iconic locations in Middle-earth, Rivendell. Holy crap, is this card amazing. This art takes attention to detail and cranks it up to 11. You can almost count the tiles and the lattice work on the buildings, not to mention the colors on the trees around the area. As far as sheer wow factor, this card is easily the cream of the crop. Every time I look at it, I see details I didn't notice before. I know I've said this a few times already, but this card is definitely in the top 5. So we've made it to the final card, the green staple, Gaia's Cradle. It's only fitting that the Heart of Nature in Dominaria be represented by the Heart of Nature in Middle-earth, the Shire. I freaking love Hobbits, and this shot of the Shire does not disappoint one bit. From the adorable little round hobbit hole to the path that you can just imagine Bilbo running down to catch Thorin and company. With all this going on, it's super easy to even miss the other great details in this image, like the wildflowers at the bottom of the card, or the little garden out front of the hobbit hole. This is one of the most iconic cards in the set, and is well worth being painted on one of the most iconic MTG cards in the game. Pure perfection. Well, that's the set. All 24 MTG cards and their Middle-earth counterparts. While this project was not quick, and certainly not cheap, it was worth every minute and every dime. These cards will forever be kept in some 5-color deck or another as a full set, and I will geek out every single time I get to show them off to another MTG or Lord of the Rings fan. So thank you for letting me walk you through these cards, and I hope they've inspired you to get creative with your own MTG collection. Are there any cards or locations you think I should get to expand this collection in the future? Please let me know in the comments, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Again, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Dustin Brossard of Brossard MTG Alters for doing such an amazing job on these. I can't wait to work with you again in the future. If you like what you saw, please like and share this video with your friends. And most important, stay janky, nerds.